It's time. It's time to open your eyes. It's time to open your mind. It's time to grow up and face reality. It's time to lock and load because it's MeatTrapper time. Hello everyone and welcome to episode number 233 of MeatTrapper Radio. And also welcome to the first episode of the year 2021. I am recording this on New Year's Day, as I have to record the episodes in advance to give me time to do the editing and production and all of that. So welcome to 2021 and goodbye to 2020. We should hope that 2021 will be a better year, but I have to be honest, I have my doubts. But be that as it may, I would like to thank our sponsor, and that is Mr. Brian McKee of SouthernSnares.com. Brian has stuck with us through thick and thin, and I appreciate everyone who has given him a chance to earn your business. And I would like to encourage you to continue to do so. And when you do, give them a call or get on their website in the order notes. Just say MeatTrapper sent me. And if you have questions about what you need or what is legal in your area, you can always just give them a call on the phone. Brian will give it to you straight, one way or the other, you know. And that's rare these days. And so we have to support those who support us, because we either stick together, what do they say, we hang together or we hang separately. So a couple of notes of business. The Walk with the Wild Man book, my shipment finally arrived after a month. Thank you, United States Postal Service. What would we do without that? I could have walked to Ohio and picked the shipment up and walked back faster than the United States Postal Service was able to get it to me. But as of this moment right now, I have one copy left in stock. One copy. The entire shipment sold out almost as soon as it came in. And I appreciate everyone's business, and I appreciate everyone's patience. But never fear, I have another shipment already on the way. As soon as the first shipment came in, I ordered a second shipment. And hopefully it will get here in short order. So if you go to the website, if you go to MeatTrapper.com and you click on Poaching Manual, and there's an out-of-stock notice. If you see that, then don't despair. As soon as the new shipment comes in, that will be back up. Now, on the backside of tonight's show, on the Patreon members side, I actually received a letter from Wild Man and an excerpt from his upcoming Volume 2. And I'm going to read that chapter, this excerpt, on the backside of tonight's show, along with his letter to me, which was very heartening to receive. So we've got a lot going on as far as that. But we're going to talk about some snaring. We're going to talk more about some slingshots. We're going to talk about canning and a couple other things if we have time. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right in. The first thing that I want to talk about is canning. I got a submission from Barry. And Barry has purchased an All-American canner, and if you are a longtime listener to this show, you know who Barry is, and you know he's a big hunter, does a lot of deer hunting and that sort of thing. He's contributed a tremendous amount of material to the show, and we're going to get his feedback on canning and his experience with canning. And that is if you can still find canning jars and lids. So anyway, without further ado, let's take a listen and see what Barry has to say.
Hi, Tim. A while back, I asked you a question about canning meat because I was interested in starting to can meat, and you answered me and I remember asking, you asked, hey, when you get around to it, let us know how it went. And, well, I finally got around to it, and I wanted to share the results if you think this is worth sharing. I'll start, I guess, I bought a pressure canner, which you need a pressure canner to can meat. You can't do it a water bath like you do vegetables. It can't happen. But I bought a pressure canner probably pretty close to 10 years ago. I got a All-American 930. That's the model number. And man, I didn't realize what a good investment that was, because I just got on their website and it says, due to extremely high demand, they're taking orders now for pressure canners that won't ship until August of 2021. So I guess people are kind of reading, the coming storm and getting ready for it, which is a good thing, I guess. But it's also almost $140 more now than what I paid for it too. So man, if people hear this and decide they want to do it and they order one, maybe order two, because who knows, it might end up being a decent investment later on. But anyhow, I wanted to start canning red meat to put up for my family. I don't like having all of my meat in the freezer. We lose a freezer or lose power, whatever. Now all of a sudden I got to find a way to put that meat up fast, and I don't like that. I like the idea of just being able to go over to the cupboard, get a jar, and pour out some meat. Put it over some rice, make a meal like that, and like old timers used to do, what people used to do for food. I see the wisdom in it now. So I finally did it with deer, and I wanted to do it with a whole deer. I shot one recently. It wasn't a very big one. It was a young buck, probably about the size of a not quite mature doe, but close to a mature doe. And I wanted to can the whole thing. And my wife said no. I lost that. So I ended up settling for, I took one of the choice cuts out of the back ham and set that aside to make our steaks with. And then I turned the rest of that back ham into canned cubed meat. I cut the cubes into probably inch by inch cubes, and I processed it very, very well. I'm a big on flavor deer fat. It's gritty, it's waxy. I don't think it really tastes that bad. It's just uncomfortable to eat, and it definitely brings down the quality of the flavor. But I could eat deer fat, but I don't like it, if that makes sense. So when I process meat, I cut all the silver skin. I take a lot of time getting all the silver skin, all the fat, all the ligaments and everything out of it. And when I was done breaking down what was probably 75% of that back ham, I only ended up with a final product of about 2 3/4 quarts of cubed deer meat. And I thought I'd get more than that. And out of a mature animal, and the further north you go, the bigger whitetails get. So up in Minnesota, along the Canadian border, Eric's probably laughing at me right now, what my little Arkansas deer yielded. But that's an honest assessment of what it yielded. And I'm looking at, I got 50 more quarts to fill, so I'm going to have to go do a lot of beaver trapping here and shoot a few more deer here pretty soon, because I want to get that put up pretty fast. But I settled on quart jars because I have a family of 4, and a quart jar will hold roughly 2 pounds of meat. So I figure worst case scenario, survival type situation, 1 quart per day gives each member of my family a half pound of meat. So that's enough. That's enough for protein requirements and everything. So that's why I bought quart jars for everything. I went a couple weeks ago to Walmart to buy more lids and rings, and in 2 Walmarts in Flippin, Arkansas and Mountain Home, Arkansas. Mountain Home being a pretty big Walmart supercenter. Their canning sections were just gone. Everything. There was not. I think the only thing that I saw in there was like 1 pack of pectin. That was it. All the lids, all the rings, all the jars, they were sold out. And I guess there's been a real high demand for that stuff. So I got online and started researching reusable canning lids, and I ended up going with what was the name brand? Harvest Right, I believe. I ended up buying 50 wide mouth lid and seals and 50 regular mouth lid and seals for my jars. I got about 100 total quarts here, and they weren't that much more expensive than the one-time use throwaway lids that you do get at Walmart for however much you pay per dozen. It was like, it's pretty expensive right now. I think it's like around $10 or so for a dozen lids, and that's I got 50 for, I think right around $30, something like that. So really it's a little bit money ahead. You still have to have rings with them. These are just the little seal that goes on the bottom of the plastic lid that you put over your jar, and then you clamp down that metal ring on it before you put it in the canner. So I think if you're going to gear up, it makes more sense to me to buy the reusable stuff that you can use over and over and over again. Money wise, there's really no difference now. Now there's a high demand on the cheap throwaway stuff. So anyways, it was an interesting process using the canner. It worked very well. I like it only took 90 minutes, which my only other experience running, I guess I'm gonna have to do another episode on how to do this, but Moonshine off of my propane cooker, I'm usually out there to out of my still to get a gallon and a quarter of whiskey sometimes takes me 4 or 5 hours. You got to run that really slow. So I actually was excited about, only 90 minutes. And, but it wasn't, it was just like whenever I make that shine, I have to constantly stay out there with it, and I have to constantly adjust the gauge on how much, gas I'm getting to keep the temperature. And in this case, it was pressure, keep it the same. I try to keep everything around 200 degrees whenever I'm distilling spirits, as they say, and on here I had to keep it above 10 pounds of pressure to ensure that it killed everything in the meat. And I learned something whenever I was researching how to do that. The guide on the pounds of pressure you need on a pressure cooker to properly kill all the bacteria and whatever in your meat, it has to do with altitude. I didn't dig into why, but the guide for the canner that I have said that if you live, if you live under 1,000 feet of elevation, then you can use 10 pounds. If you live over 1,000 feet of elevation, you need to use 15 pounds. I live at 741 feet, although if I went 2 miles away from here and drove across the river, I'd be up over 1,000 feet. So I went ahead and I kept it between 10 and 15 pounds for 90 minutes. But all I did is I took my quart jars, I rinsed them good with soap and water, turned my oven up to 215 degrees, put my cleaned jars, my quart jars, in there upside down on a baking sheet, kept them in there for half an hour at 215 degrees. While that was going on, I took my lids and my rings and I put them in a pot of a light boiling water on the stove. Did them for about half an hour. Got my cubed deer meat ready, and when I got done with the jars, I just took the jars, set them up on the counter, filled the deer meat all the way up to about an inch of headspace, so almost up to where the shoulders of the jar starts, just to give it that little 1 inch of room. I put a teaspoon per quart. I will say that is only for flavor. The salt has nothing to do with the preservation. It's the high temperature. Once you get up to about 10 pounds on the pressure cooker, I was looking at the gauge, and that's right around 240 degrees. And when you get up to 15, it's like 250 or something like that. That is actually what is preserving your meat. The salt, everything else you put in it is just for flavor. So I went kind of light on the salt, 1 teaspoon, and I packed it full of raw deer. Packed the jar, like I said, full of raw deer. Put my 1 teaspoon of salt, and then I ladled boiling water. On the directions for the recipe I was following, it said you only want a few inches of the boiling water ladled into the jar. Well, 1 ladle filled the rest of my jar. You really don't need much water at all to get those few inches, because when the meat cooks, it's going to make its own juice, and that's going to cover the meat. So I ended up having to to pour like most of the water, which was the salted water, out. So I had to kind of resalt. I only resalted with about half, figuring some of the salt was still in there. And then I took my lids out of the little rolling boiling water with the seals, put them on, hand tightened the lids down, put them in my pressure cooker that was sitting on a propane burner, and I put the lid on it, and then I let it get up to start steaming. When it was blowing steam really good through the vent hole, I let it go for 10 minutes, let it blow steam for just 10 straight minutes to make sure everything was good and good and up to temperature on the inside. And then I set that 15-pound, I set my weight on top of that on my pressure cooker, and I set it on the 15-pound setting. I let it get up to 15 pounds, but again, that hour and a half, I was out there every 10 minutes or so, and I was just slightly backing off my gas, slightly turning up the gas flow on the propane, because it kept bouncing kind of back and forth between 10 and 15 pounds. And if you just set it and walk away, you're probably going to screw it up. If I hadn't have been checking it like that, I would have got below 10 pounds a few times. And if I would have gone above, probably up above 20, my warning level starts at about 20 pounds on my pressure cooker before it could blow your little neoprene safety valve on there. So you really need to mind it. So it is kind of labor intensive. Again, my only experience before this is making whiskey, and that's a whole lot more goes into that. So I actually thought it was really nice to only have to be out there for an hour and a half. And when it was done, you kill the heat to your pressure cooker. Let the pressure cooker come back down to where there is no more pressure in it, and then it's safe to open. Take the little weight off of the top of it, let it blow the last bit of the steam out. Open your pressure cooker, take your cans out, put them on or your jars, put them on a rack and let them cool. And then 24 hours later, you can check your seals, make sure everything's sealed good. If it's not sealed good, put it in the refrigerator, eat it within a few days. If it is sealed good, you got 2 years, to eat that. And that's a huge, I feel really good about that I don't have to worry about electricity. I'm going to, I really like the way it tastes, by the way. It's really good. And it's simple, I can just pour that as it is right over some rice. If I want to get fancy, I can just whip up a little au jus gravy packet. It's not really fancy. It's hack gravy, but it's still really good. 3 minutes on a stovetop, got some McCormick au jus gravy going, mix your meat in with that, throw it over rice. That's a good meal in my book, and I don't have to worry about refrigeration for the meat. So one thing I did run into was when I pulled my jars out, they were covered in a white waxy powder, and after researching that is my hard water. I should have put some white vinegar in my water apparently, and that would stop that from happening. It's no big deal. All I got to do is just clean it off once my cans, once everything's good to go, So anyhow, that is my experience with canning meat. It went well, and if this helps somebody, great.
Well, great stuff, Barry. And, I often call what you're doing, canning meat and things like that, I call them redneck MREs. Because like you say, you can just open the jar and you could eat it right out of the jar. You can pour it out of the jar and heat it up and eat it. You can use it to further other meals, et cetera, et cetera. One of the things that I do, because I like peas, not English peas, but like field peas and cow peas. And I grow Mississippi Red Ripper peas. And what I do is when I grow them, I don't pick them when they're ripe. I let them dry on the vine. Okay, so that when I go out to pick my peas, they're rattling in the pods, right? They're already dried and ready for storage. But dried peas, like dried beans, require that you soak them in water, let them rehydrate, and then they require sometimes a lengthy cooking. So what I do is I can them. What I'll do is I'll take my dried peas and I'll rehydrate them, just like you would, dried beans, soak them overnight and what have you. And then I'll put a slice of bacon in the bottom of the jar, fill it with the peas, and then can it in the pressure canner. And that gives you a little bit of fat in there. It gives you some good flavor, and the peas are already cooked and like, like Barry says, you just pour them out of the jar and eat. And it saves you all of that lengthy soak and prep time, because you gotta understand, in a grid down situation, whether it's a hurricane that you've lost power or what have you, anything that you can do to shorten meal prep time is a good thing. Because in a grid down situation, whether it's a tornado or a power outage or a hurricane that's come through, you're gonna have your hands full on a lot of other things, and you're not going to have time to go through lengthy cooking processes, and you may not have the fuel that's needed for lengthy cooking processes. And I can remember, canning, our ancestors understood this, but I can remember my old German grandmother canning whole chickens. She would take a chicken and stuff it into a canning jar and can that chicken. And these were yard birds. These were the kind of chickens that you had running around in the front yard. And old Granny, she'd chase those things down and get them, and she'd butcher them and pluck them and all of that. And she'd stick the whole thing in the jar, because they didn't have the Franken chickens that we have today that are, force fed from cages and pumped full of steroids and antibiotics, and where a chicken breast is a piece of meat the size of your head. No, these were real honest to God chickens, and so yes, they would fit in a canning jar. So there's a lot of room for experimentation for us trappers with that. We've been doing a lot of talking about ducks. And of course, anybody that's a trapper, you have access to squirrels and muskrats, and you don't necessarily have to separate the meat from the bone in order to put it in a jar and can it. So that's some food for thought there. You may want to do a little research on that. But the last thing is, as far as my advice on canning, is make sure you get the Ball Blue Book of canning. Now, it was interesting because Barry had talked about, his local Walmart's being wiped out of canning supplies. So I did a walkthrough when he sent it in of the big Walmart here in my area, and it was interesting because they had gallon jars and they had half-gallon jars, and that was about it. Everything else was gone. And I think they had one little flat of the itty-bitty little jelly jars or something like that. But people know what's coming, and people are stocking up, man. And if you're not, then you need to think about it. And the last thing I want to talk about on this particular topic, we've been talking about canning and pressure canners, but you can do pressure cooking without canning. In other words, you can use your canner. Like I have a Presto pressure cooker that I use for canning, but it also is just good for cooking fast meals and for tenderizing tough meat. But as you guys know, I'm in IT, and so as a result, I work with a lot of Indians. Okay, and I'm not talking about American Indians. I'm talking about Indians from the country of India, and most of them are vegetarians, and a lot of them, their diet is composed primarily of lentils and of what they call dal. DAL, and that's different types of peas and split peas, dried stuff. So in other words, they're eating a lot of these legumes that are dried, which take a long time to cook, and so they're really big on pressure cookers. And I was talking to one particular guy he's Indian, but he's not a vegetarian. He actually eats meat, and he was talking about cooking goat and how he cooks goat meat, which can be, as you can imagine, can be tough. Now, an Indian pressure cooker differs from an American-style pressure cooker in that the American-style pressure cooker, has it either has a gauge on it or it has a weight to regulate the pressure, so you're trying to keep it at 15 pounds or 10 pounds or whatever, and you're trying to regulate the heat. Their pressure cookers work on a completely different methodology. And I think it's interesting to share, because if you have an Indian grocery store near you, you can usually find one of their pressure cookers in there, or you can get on Amazon and find these things. But they go by whistles. Okay, well, the concept of whistles. So they don't have a gauge or anything like that. What their pressure cookers do is when you put the food and the water in there and you put it on the heat, you turn it on, the pressure builds up, and then when the pressure gets to a certain internal pressure, the check valve opens and allows the steam to escape. In other words, it allows the pressure to dissipate, and when that happens, that creates a whistling sound, and that's what they call a whistle. And so their recipes are simply how many whistles does it take before the food is done. Different foods take different numbers of whistles. And I have it on very good authority that goat meat takes 5 whistles. He says, yes, 5 whistle for goat meat, and then it'll be good, you know. But I thought that was an interesting take on it because, you know, if you had to cook over an open fire or charcoal or something like that, you're not going to be able to regulate a pressure canner or a pressure cooker specifically like we do. But, you know, since they are cooking in a more primitive environment in many cases, their system of simply letting the pressure build up, then blow off, letting the pressure build up and blow off, you know, whether it's 3 times, 4 times, or what have you, it's as long as you don't lose count of how many whistles, it's pretty simple. So I thought that was fascinating. So anyway, the next thing I wanted to share is I love getting emails from people that finally get out and catch their first animals or catch their first beavers and put the food on their table, because that's what it's all about, you know. Because information is useless without action. If you don't act upon information, then it's pretty much pointless. You know, whether it's gardening, whether it's trapping, hunting, reloading, you know, what have you. But I got an email in, and I'd like to share it with you. And it says, Tim, I took your advice and ordered a couple dozen snares from Southern Snares and finally had a chance to set some out the day after Christmas. The first time ever setting snares, but I set them up per your videos. 7 snares netted 3 beavers, 1 head catch, which was DOA, 1 around the shoulders, and 1 by the tail. Hell of a lot safer and faster than 330s, and a lot less equipment required. And I didn't even have to step foot in the water. Everything done on the slides or on trails on land. Backstraps and rear quarters are now chilling in the deep freeze. Thanks again for the excellent content and the advice. Hope you had a good Christmas. Man, I love getting stuff like that. And he's exactly right in that why do you think I'm so big on snaring, man? Because they're a lot lighter than 330s. If you set a snare off on your hand, it doesn't turn into a trip to the hospital. And yeah, you don't have to have so much equipment and everything. But I did write him back, and I said, you know, you do realize, I hope you do realize that the first time you go out, you set 7 snares, you catch 3 beavers, and you don't get wet. I said, it's all downhill from here. It's all downhill from here. I said, dude, what you did is the equivalent of when Daddy wants to go fishing, and he's got to take his little princess with him. So he goes to Walmart and he buys her the Barbie doll fishing pole set, and he takes it and he takes it out of the wrapper and he puts the hook on the hook and gives it to her, and she throws the bobber in the water, and on the first cast she catches a state record crappie. You know, that's you know, we've all read about that little girl with the Barbie fishing pole throws one out there and catches a state record fish, right? I said, dude, it's all downhill from here, because I don't think I've ever been beaver trapping where I didn't get wet. But anyway, that's great. But he had an FYI, and he's from Kentucky, and he said, you know, the Nashville bombing knocked out systems all over far western Kentucky, the internet, 911, cell service, and credit card processing systems. He said in Paducah, at least one of our Walmarts completely closed on the 26th, along with a number of gas stations, because they couldn't process credit and debit cards, and apparently they weren't set up to take cash only, so they just locked the doors. You may have cash on hand, which is a very good idea, but there is no guarantee that the stores will be open or even accepting cash. Just some food for thought. Yep, and I can believe that 100%, with the war on cash as the result of the COVID war that has been unleashed on the people of the United States. Because, cash can kill you, man. It's crawling with COVID cooties. I mean, a dollar bill is just infested with COVID cooties waiting to jump on you if you touch it. And then, of course, we don't have any coins. We can't have any coins because of COVID. COVID kills coins. They can't make any coins. So, if the cash is going to kill you and the coins are unavailable, then you got to use cards until somebody blows up the T3 lines coming in and out of Nashville at AT&T, and then the cards don't work, so then nothing works. So, times like that, it's nice to have some fuel stored. It's nice to have your medicines stocked up if you require any, and it's nice to have some Redneck MREs up on the shelf, open and eat, right? So, just something to think about. Now, the final topic for the public half of tonight's show, because we do two halves to every show. We do a public half that is free and available on my YouTube channel, and then we do a members-only half on the back end of the show. And if you're not a member, you ought to consider becoming one. You can go to patreon.com/MeatTrapper and get signed up, because we have been dumping a tremendous amount of free bonus content over there. I uploaded a zip file with, I think it was 40-something books in that. All of the Ragnar Benson books are up there. We've got all kinds of Foxfire books, different documentaries and movies, and people have started sharing some of their trapping videos as well. That's available to all of the premium members over there. And it really is good to see people coming together and sharing. Because as we move into 2021, I think more than ever, we're going to need each other, and we're going to need to rely on each other. Because I think 2020 was the beginning of the current fourth turning. If you're not familiar with the fourth turning, you can look it up. Strauss and Howe wrote a book on the fourth turning, and that's where every so often the world changes in a way that it will never be the same. And the last fourth turning was the Great Depression, World War II era, and after World War II, nothing was ever the same as it was before the Great Depression, and we're entering that fourth turning now. And I think 2020 was the year that broke America, broke America as it was. We have seen, we've seen the deep state exposed. We've seen the Band-Aid ripped off the deep state, exposed for all to see, to where it doesn't really matter who you elect. The deep state is going to continue to do what they want, how they want. And if the insolent deplorables get out of line, they're going to simply lock you in your houses and make you wear a muzzle. And that's exactly what has been done. They've destroyed small business. They're destroying the middle class. They're forcing everybody into a two-tiered system. You're either going to be the super rich or you're going to be everybody else down below. And you're shopping, you're not going to go to mom and pop stores and anything like that. You're going to go to Amazon and Walmart. And if you go to Walmart and you've been observant, you've seen the brand selection thin out to where you have fewer and fewer and fewer choices to choose from. And you can go back and listen to old episodes of the podcast. And I over a year ago, I told you that you would never, ever, ever, ever again be able to walk into a Walmart at 3 a.m. and buy a lobster tail. And so far, that prediction has held correct. as have a lot of my predictions. And it's not because I'm anything smart. It's simply because I can look at the situation and I know who our enemies are, and I know what their goals are. It's very simple. But we've had riots, and we've got to defund the police. We have cities like Chicago where 50 black men get shot in one weekend, and there's not a peep about it. But if a white cop shoots a black fleeing felon, then the whole country comes apart, and we have to tear statues down, and that'll change everything. It's just ridiculous. We had a virus that supposedly started in Wuhan, China, and then President Trump locked a travel ban and blocked Chinese from coming in, and everybody called him a racist, because he hates Chinese. And Nancy Pelosi wanted to invite everybody to Chinatown to come celebrate diversity. And then, of course, they turn right back around and they say Trump didn't act quickly enough, he didn't act forcefully enough, and he doesn't care about Americans dying. And people fall for this. People just they go right along. 2020 was the year that Americans threw what little liberties they had away, and they did it voluntarily. They did it willingly. They did it gleefully. And they turned into Stasi East German style snitches, to where people now will call the police on somebody for not wearing a mask. We have gone full retard in this. There was a story just out of Arizona the other day. A woman, she had 3 kids. She's been arrested for child abuse because she physically attacked her kids for not wearing masks. She hit one in the face. I believe she kicked another one, and she strangled another one around by the neck with her hands because evidently they had tested positive for COVID and they weren't wearing their mask. This is what the American people have turned into. It's absurd. And then we have a COVID relief bill that we're going to give millions and millions and millions of dollars to transgender studies in Pakistan. And Pakistan is an enemy of ours. We're going to give them millions of dollars, and yet we want to give people $600 a piece. Because we've closed their restaurants down and we're not letting them go to work. It's ridiculous. And like this election, I don't care who you voted for, because it doesn't matter. But we're supposed to believe that Joe Biden won 17% of all the counties in the United States. He lost ground amongst black and Hispanic voters. He lost 18 out of 19 of the bellwether flip counties. He lost Ohio, Florida, and Iowa. But he got more votes than anybody in history. He got more votes than Barack Obama, and he never left his basement to campaign. And then the Supreme Court won't even look into it. I mean, it's over. It's over, and we're not going back. So you got to look forward. And we have to take care of ourselves, and we have to help each other out. So now, if you're a Patreon member, stay tuned, because I've got some great stuff. Nicholas has got some great stuff on slingshots, and some very good stuff on sources for slingshot ammunition. And then I've got the letter that I received from Wildman, and I've got an excerpt from his upcoming book, Walk with the Wild Man version 2. The journey continues, and he's got a great chapter here on duck fishing, and that's what we've been talking about.